hierarchical method, we have three different types like Bayesian method, algorithmic method and probabilistic method. As we know, a midpoint has to be calculated and then rest of the steps to be followed. So we can say that this will take longer time compared to k-means. So with respect to assignment, what happens is we will be fixing the centroid, and with respect to that centroid, other atoms has to be packed. All this A, B, C, D, E will form their individual cluster. Hello everyone, I welcome you all to the unit 4 and this is all about clustering. Over here, my name is Deepa Kutnikar. I am working as an assistant professor in the Department of Computer Science, Vidhyaashram, Temple of Excellence, MYSURU. In today's session, we will be discussing what is cluster analysis, and then forward we will be discussing the types of clustering. Under that types, we will be studying two types of clustering for today's session, and that is none other than partitioning method, and the second method is the hierarchical method. So we will be discussing regarding these two methods in depth. Alright, let's begin our session with understanding what is cluster analysis. Cluster analysis is just a process of analyzing the group of data based on the similarities. Now let's see a figure over here which shows cluster analysis. So we can see various circles, which is nothing but a cluster of data are formed, and in that cluster we will be storing similar types of data in one cluster, and then next type of data in the second type, and in third next set of data in the third type. So in this way we will be grouping the similar data types in one of the cluster, and thus we can say that the objects in the cluster are highly similar and the objects in the different cluster are dissimilar. And now how the similarity is been measured? So it is measured using different distance measures. We will be measuring the similarity. So this is all about a cluster analysis. Up next, let's understand the types of clustering methods. The first method, as we have discussed in our agenda, it is none other than a simple partitioning methods. And under this partitioning methods, we have two different methods. The first one is k-means and the second one is k-midpoints. Okay, next type is a hierarchical method. Under hierarchical method, we have three different types like Bayesian method, algorithmic method and probabilistic method. We will be discussing regarding these things. The third method is a density based method, and under this only we will be studying dbScan and dbenclave. Further, the next method is not other than a grid based method. Under this grid based method, we will be studying string and click. These are the four different clustering methods. Up next, before moving with the various clustering methods, let's quickly understand what are the applications of cluster analysis. These cluster analyzed data are very important in medical fields as well as in the marketing and customer segmentation. It is also required for geography and geography based research or the study, as well as it can be used in the image segmentation processes. Also, it can be used in social network analysis. So these are the various applications of cluster analysis. Alright, as we did understood what is cluster analysis and what are its types, followed by the applications. Now let's understand each type in a perfect way. The first type is none other than partitioning method. So we know that under partitioning method there are two different types, and let's understand in brief what is the overview of partitioning method, or let's understand what are the various steps that's been involved in the partitioning method. The first step is none other than partitioning our data into k disjoint clusters. So that is the initial thing that we need to do. Next, we need to confirm that each object will exactly belongs to one cluster. Yes, correct. It must and should be a part of any one of the cluster, correct? Okay, the third step that we need to follow is the cluster should be formed to optimize an objective function, followed by the next step, the common algorithms like k-means or k-midpoint can be applied. So these are the various steps that we are supposed to follow when we are moving with partitioning method. Okay, then let's start with the first type of partitioning method, that is k-means clustering. This is completely a simple as well as popular partitioning method that is available, and with respect to this, each cluster is represented by the mean value. As the name itself says, k-mean. It must be represented in the form of a mean value. This k-means is completely suitable for the numerical data analysis, and in order to measure the distance between cluster, this follows various distance measuring techniques like Euclidean distance measuring, etc. So over here we have a k-mean representation. Let's see what is the initial thing. The initial step is the intuition step, where the raw data is collected and a cluster is formed. Further, the next thing is initialization, where our data will be summarized into the mean form. So you might remember what is mean, that is total sum of a provided values whole divided by the number of values that are present, correct? So we need to calculate that mean which forms a centroid for a cluster. Okay, that's my second step, and up next we will be doing the assignment operation. So with respect to assignment, what happens is we will be fixing the centroid, and with respect to that centroid, other atoms has to be packed. The next step is convergence. With respect to centroid, other data or the raw data that is available inside that cluster will be converged or brought towards the mean. Up next, what we will be doing is we will minimize the MCCS values, which is also considered as a inertia values, where WCS is nothing but within cluster sum of squares, which can also be considered as an inertia. This WCSS helps in evaluating the compactness of the clusters. Thus, we have evaluated the compactness, and this is our final result. So that's what we will be forming, and this can be represented in a form of a graph, the visualization, which is formed through an elbow method. So that's a simple method which uses various cluster values in order to form a visualized data. So this is how a k-means clustering works. Yes, now let's start with understanding the exact algorithm. So the first step, what we will be doing is we need to select the k value. What is that k value? K value is none other than the number of clusters. So initially we need to select the number of clusters. So that's a simple k. Next, what we have to do is we have to initialize the centroids randomly. Further, we will be assigning the data points to the nearest centroid. Up next, we will recalculate the centroid values and verify our mean value with respect to the cluster. And finally, we will be repeating all the steps until no change in the centroid is found. So these are the steps that has to be followed with respect to k-means algorithm. Alright, let's understand the advantages and the limitations of k-means algorithm. Let's first understand the advantages. This algorithm is very easy to implement as it is very simple, and the next advantage that we can say is the process is completely fast and it gives an efficient result. So that's the advantage. Up next, the limitations. These kind of algorithms are very sensitive to outliers. Also, it needs the predefined k values. So complete algorithm is dependent on k, that is none other than the number of clusters. Thus, it forms a disadvantage. So these are the advantages and limitations of k-means clustering. Up next, the second type of partitioning method is the k-midoid clustering. This algorithm is very similar to k-means, but this uses midoids. Thus, when we have started speaking with respect to midoid, let's understand what is a midoid is. A midoid is a most centrally located object in the cluster That's what's the advantage of placing it to the central. We can expect the minimization of total dissimilarity between it and other neighboring points in that cluster. Thus, we can say that midpoint is an actual data object. Please know that it is a data object which is more robust to outliers and noise. The common method that is used to find midpoint is none other than PAM algorithm. PAM in the sense partitioning around the midpoints. So we will be using this PAM algorithm, that is partitioning around midpoint. So let's see what are the exact steps that we need to follow with respect to k-midpoint clustering. The initial thing we need to do is to select the k-midpoint randomly. The next step will be assigning objects to the nearest midpoint. Next, we can move forward with calculating the total cost of the midpoint. And what if the cost is reduced or the cost is less? Then we have to change our midpoint because we can't continue with the same midpoint, isn't it? Why? Because we have many neighboring objects whose midpoints may be greater than this center, then thus midpoint. Thus we need to continue with the same steps until a stable condition is reached. So these are the very important steps that we need to follow with respect to k-midpoint. So over here we can observe that we have a group of data, and for that group of data we have formed a cluster. So how is this cluster formed? That's formed by using the midpoint calculation and up next analyzing the neighboring objects and then verifying whether that object or the midpoint object having exactly the highest cost. If it doesn't has highest cost, then we can change the midpoint. So through this process, we can expect these kind of clustering. So these are the two important partitioning methods. Up next, let's see the advantages as well as limitations of k-midpoint. The first advantage, yes, that's none other than it is less sensitive to the outliers. And the next advantage that we can consider is this clustering will completely consider or uses the real data points. Up next, moving forward with limitation, as we know a midpoint has to be calculated and then rest of the steps to be followed. So we can say that this will take longer time compared to k-means and it is computationally expensive too. So these are the two limitations of the k-midpoint clustering. Alright, now let's move with the second type. That's none other than hierarchical clustering. So the first type we did understood what is that. That is none other than partitioning method, and the second one is a hierarchical method. As the name itself saying, here we will build a hierarchy of clusters. Next thing that we have to note here is that's under hierarchical clustering, there is no need to define the number of clusters initially. Or we can also say that it does not require the predefined number of clusters. Further, the results are shown or visualized in a dendrogram format. Now let's understand what is this dendrogram. So it is nothing but a simple tree-like structure, and it shows how the individual data points or the groups of data are merged together. This is a representation of a simple dendrogram. In order to go with hierarchical clustering, we have two best approaches. The first one is agglomerative approach and the second one is divisive hierarchical clustering. Now let's move forward with understanding this hierarchical clustering. Thus, the first type of hierarchical clustering is none other than algorithmic method. This method is completely based or dependent on the distance and the linkage criteria, where the linkage method includes the first type is a single linkage, next one is a complete linkage, and the third one is an average linkage. Due to this linkages, we can say that it completely produces an deterministic clustering. Thus, under this, we will be using the initial approach that we have discussed, that is none other than a simple agglomerative method, where a complete process will take place from bottom-up hierarchical clustering method, where each data point will start as its own individual cluster. So you can observe here we have A, B, C, D, E. Now, all this A, B, C, D, E will form their individual cluster, and in the next step, it will merge with one of its cluster, and then finally, it forms a simple hierarchical model. Thus, we will call this kind of method as agglomerative method of hierarchical clustering. The next method under hierarchical clustering is probabilistic method. This is completely based on various probability modes where it assumes as the data is generated by the probability distributions and the various objects are assigned to clusters based on their likelihood. Thus, we can say that the probabilistic method will handles the uncertainties efficiently. The next method that we use under hierarchical clustering is a Bayesian method. This method utilizes the Bayesian theorem for clustering. It incorporates the prior knowledge of the data. As it incorporates the prior knowledge of the data, it moves forward with computing the posterior probability of the cluster membership. So there will be various members, and out of those members, the memberships will be maintained by some of the cluster. So by using them, we can calculate the posterior probability, which helps us in monitoring the complex data problem or the models. Thus, we are applying the Bayes theorem for our prior information, and with that we can calculate and represent the posterior probability values in a form of a good visualized form. Thus, this was all about today's session, and in the next session we will be discussing rest of the clustering method types, that is none other than a density based clustering followed by grid based methods, and then we will also be studying the distance measuring in algorithmic methods followed by the types of linkages of clustering and evaluation of clustering. So these are the things that we discuss in our upcoming session, that's in session 2. Now see you up in the next session. Thank you.